A trio of brutal headlines on the feelings some Democrats are confessing. The Associated Press is reporting anxiety over the disconnect between President Biden's rosy messaging and the actual reality Americans are feeling over raging inflation and the high cost of food and just about everything. From the Wall Street Journal, White House aides frustrated with the president's inaction on policy initiatives, saying they need some legislative wins before the midterm elections. And Democrat lawmakers are expressing those same concerns. The Journal also reporting Democrats are increasingly worried about 2024. While they expect Joe Biden to run, they are less sure he actually should run. Power panel now, Doug Collins, former Republican congressman of Georgia. David Carlucci, former Democrat New York State Senator. David and Doug, great to have you. Doug, I'll come to you first.
Okay.
When Republicans look at this politically, strategically ahead of the midterms, what do you make of it?
Well, I make it is exactly where I think Republicans want to be at this point. They're focusing, and if they can continue to focus on the economy, focus on the things that, frankly, we've heard from a Democrat say from years ago, 30 years ago, is the economy stupid. If we keep the Republicans focused on that, then this just plays into that narrative of the disconnect between the Biden administration and what people are feeling. And I'm not sure a legislative victory right now would help because people are looking for, relief that will affect them right now. Legislative victories that could affect that are not really happening. So I think Republicans feel like this is a good space. They keep on their message and let the Democrats continue to fight with the perception that they're out of touch.
You know, David, normally when you look at polling, you can say, and I hear it from people both sides of the aisle all the time, well, let's see what the voters do. But this was staff. These are people who work on the Hill, some of them. These are lawmakers. These are the people who are closest to the messaging of a president of the United States. And they're worried. What do you make of it?
Well, look, I think Republicans are right to be excited about the midterms, but the reality is that most Americans are in the middle. And all they have to do is tune in to the January 6th hearings, learn what Trump did and did not do, see that you still have these die-in-the-wool loyalists to Trump, and add to that the unwillingness of Republicans to do anything on gun violence, and their eagerness to remove a woman's right to choose.
And you went to a president who has not been in office for over a year. And I want to give you another shot at it because I think it's important for you to start with the very first words you started with, but aim it at the Democrats. You said most people are in the middle. What are you going to do with the far left? That's your president, our president, but your party.
I think the problem is many times when we're running for office, we're running against ourselves as candidates. And the reality is, yes, there are issues like inflation and the economy going bonkers. But we cannot blame our president because they have little to do with inflation. And the reality is that Trump, yes, is a problem for Democrats, but at the same time is our blessing because it excites people and gets people excited. Yes.
Inflation. Something that the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, had to apologize for in recent days because she got it so wrong. And all she was doing was touting what the White House was saying. I feel like I'm doing Doug's job for him. I'm going to move on now because gas prices is too easy. It's like low-hanging fruit for me to throw back at you.
Exactly. We can blame it just like we can blame the weather.
The Wall Street Journal with this. Oh, you're baiting me. You don't blame the weather for high gas prices when you cut off pipelines and you want to buy your oil from dirty manufacturers like Venezuela.
The reality
is that
it's easy.
The president's tendency to proceed with caution has annoyed some of his own aides at times. Democrat lawmakers have also expressed both public and private frustration that the White House is not acting fast enough on a host of policy fronts. They say Mr. Biden needs to do everything he can to notch policy victories ahead of the midterm elections, which could result in heavy losses for his party amid high inflation and gas prices, or heretofore known as, per David, Doug, the weather.
Look, if I was David, I wouldn't want to talk about the Biden administration either. I get it. I'd want to talk about anything else that's going on that you can focus or deflect away from what is shaping up to be a very bad November for Democrats. Look, you can't go at an energy crisis when you've actually taken the position that you're in against the American energy independence. You can't take the fact that you're now downplaying, trying to not talk about inflation when it was actually the influx of a lot of money into the system last year that Larry Summers, many liberals liberal economists said would actually do exactly what is happening here. And now when you have the Treasury Secretary taking the fall, saying, yeah, this is a problem, we misread it, and then the Biden administration sort of going against them, I think, look, they put her out there to take a fall. I think that's wrong, but I wouldn't want to talk about anything else right now, everything else except the economy, because that's really where people are focused right now. They see it in their gas prices, they see it in their food prices, they see it everywhere. You want to talk 2024? We'll get to 2024 eventually, but Democrats don't want to talk about 2024 either, because they don't want to go in there with Biden. And when they look at the bench, they turn around, and David, you might be one on the bench they're looking at because they don't have anybody else.
David's a nice guy.
Yeah, I got no problem with David.
I bet he could figure out some root causes at the border. So David, 141 days to the midterms. I have to let you go pretty quickly. But again, I want to know the strategy now, because you think it's a lot of time. We're going to blink summer's over. It's going to be here.
Look, I think it's very simple. I think for Republicans to think it's a slam dunk is delusional. The reality is, like I said, most Americans are in the middle. You have the January 6th hearings. You have Donald Trump playing a really critical role here.
You like him. You keep talking about him.
Oh, he's a gift to the Democrats if we're talking politics.
Really?
Because most people are in the middle. Yes, because they see what has he done, and they see these hearings.
Is he running in
People
141 days? Did I miss something?
I think he might be. I don't see Donald Trump stepping aside for anyone. And that means that he will be the candidate in 2024, and that will be a blessing to Democrats, because the reality is, yes, there are issues like inflation, but there's not much that we can do about it. If we're going to blame Biden for inflation, we have to blame Trump just as much. And that's the reality, because these are the things that are beyond our control.
I mean, where do you start? I mean, David, I appreciate it, but you're making my case for me, and this is pretty easy. I mean, there's an election between 2024 and 2020. It's right here in 2022. Democrats have no answers, no solutions, and they've been downplaying. The Biden administration is out of touch, and people see it. They're not in the middle on that. Look at the polls. He's upside down badly. Why? Because he's disconnected from the American people, pushing agendas that they don't care about.
And if they do come to you for the bench of the Democrats to run for the White House, David, will you announce it here?
Can I be on with you?
We've got plenty of good candidates. I think Biden will be a winning candidate, but if he's not, we have plenty to choose from.
All right. David, thank you. Great to see you. Thank you both.
Good to see y'all.
Take care. New polling on Americans' fading belief in God will tell you who has the most faith and who has the least. Plus, the border crisis turning deadly for young people around our nation. Teenage drug deaths have exploded as fentanyl is now pouring into the country. Remember who makes it? Most of it's coming from China. Dr. Mark Siegel goes in depth on the crisis and the heartbreaking toll it's having on American families. Pete Hegseth will also weigh in. Stay close.